Sunlight faded across the windows of the house at 34 Ellisbury Lane. The aura of an approaching storm loomed heavy as the clouds moved across the sky. Cassandra Carson stared out of her front porch window in anticipation and worry. "Any sign of him yet?" She heard the voice of her husband Abel drift down the stairs. "No," Cassandra said, clasping a hand to the doorknob. "Well, I hope he isn't lost." Cassandra turned to see Abel carrying 3 bags toward her. This would be the first weekend that they would actually have to enjoy each other's company since their honeymoon. She was glad that they could get away for the weekend, even if it were for a conference that was honoring Abel for his sales prowess. The hum of an engine could be heard approaching the house. "I think it's him!" They both peered out of the door as a small gray car pulled into the driveway. Cassandra's nephew Stephen was home from college for fall break. Luckily for Cassandra and Abel, they needed someone to keep their massive home occupied and safe while they were away. Stephen, being young and strapped for cash, happily obliged. He stepped out of his car and marveled at the structure that was built from the ground up. The house had been the subject of conversations with his family just weeks prior. As Stephen approached the house, the sun disappeared into the horizon, taking the last few streaks of orange and crimson from the sky. Cassandra wrapped Stephen in a massive hug as he stepped onto the porch, while Abel extended his hand for a firm handshake and took Stephen under his arm, like he always did. "This is unbelievable," Stephen said, gazing at the marble floor and hand-carved mahogany wood banisters of the stairs. Stephen had grown to be like a son to Abel and Cassandra, since they didn't have any children. "I would show you around, but we actually have to hit the road soon," Abel said, picking up the bags as a sign to get Cassandra out of the house. "Yes, we must be going, sweetie," said Cassandra, giving Stephen another hug and a kiss on the cheek. "I bought everything that you like. And you have our numbers in case of an emergency, right?" "Yep." Abel and Cassandra rushed to the car as a bolt of lightning shot across the sky, ushering in a crescendo of heavy rain. "You're sure he'll be all right?" Cassandra said, looking over at Abel. "He'll be fine, babe. Trust me. He's 21 now." "I guess you're right." Cassandra loved her husband, which is why she didn't tell him that she didn't like being in the house by herself. After all, this was his dream home. She didn't want to tell Abel that she was skeptical about Stephen being alone in the house. She figured that the shadows that she had seen were merely her overactive imagination, and that the faint whisper of her name throughout the hallways was only the wind. She also didn't tell Abel that she was absolutely petrified of the idea of having to go into the basement for anything. They pulled out of the driveway as Cassandra stared at Stephen in the hallway, his young silhouette illuminated by the chandelier in the main hall, and the faint glimpse of another being beside him, only momentarily. The house slowly disappeared as they rode up the street and turned the corner. The sound of the rain intensified as the car sped down the road. Cassandra decided to let go of her fears about Stephen being in the home all weekend, and reclined in the leather seat while the sounds of smooth jazz filled her ears. The house slowly disappeared as they rode up the street and turned the corner. The sound of the rain intensified as the car sped down the road. They were about an hour away when the shrill of Abel's cell phone interrupted the radio. Abel reached blindly, searching for it, forgetting that he had programmed his phone to be answered through the speaker system in the car. Cassandra pressed the green answer button on the dashboard. "Hello?" Abel said, nearly yelling, trying to compete with the sound of the rain. "Hey, Uncle Abel, it's me, Stephen." "Hey man, what's up?" "The lights went out." "Ah, dang it. Must have been a circuit or something." "Okay, what you need to do is go into the basement and just flip the switch. There's a flashlight on the kitchen counter." "Okay, a flashlight. Got it." A cold chill came over Cassandra when she heard the word basement. "Honey, I don't think he should be in the basement by himself." "Babe, he's a big boy. He'll be all right." "Yeah, Aunt Cassie, I'm fine." "Okay, there's a door in the kitchen next to the pantry." They could hear the sound of Stephen's shoes as they squeaked across the tile, followed by the sound of the basement door creaking on its hinges. Cassandra listened intently as she could hear Stephen walking down the stairs. "Now the circuit breaker should be in the back." They could hear Stephen's confusion as he tried to make his way around the massive basement. There was silence for a moment. "Stephen, are you still there?" Cassandra said, nearly screaming as the rain pelted the car. There was nothing. "Stephen!" "Yeah, Aunt Cass, I'm here. Sorry." At that moment, Abel and Cassandra began to hear what sounded like a swirl of disembodied voices. "Stephen!" Abel bellowed. There was nothing. Total silence. Just as the collective fear in the car mounted, heavy breathing could be heard through the phone. Cassandra could feel the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "He's ours now," said an otherworldly voice. There was silence and a continued state of shock, until a devious roar of laughter filled the car. Abel screeched on the tires, jerking both he and Cassandra back and forth. Movement could be heard through the receiver before a woman's serpentine hiss of a voice echoed through the car. "It's too late." By the time they reached home, the rain had ceased, and only the sound of crickets could be heard. When the police arrived, they informed Abel and Cassandra that they would do everything in their power to locate Stephen. But the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. A full investigation was conducted, and the Carsons' collective character was called into question. Ultimately, they were found to be innocent of any wrongdoing. Unfortunately, the same could not be said about their marriage. During the countless interviews and questions, Cassandra decided to do some research of her own. She found that hundreds of years prior, her home was a site of mass murders and ritualistic sacrifices. At the center of these crimes were two people, Sidney and Beulah Montgomery, a husband and wife, a devoted couple, much like Abel and Cassandra. They came north, leaving their bloody past behind them in New Orleans. They were loved by all of the townspeople. That is, until folks started disappearing. An investigation into the disappearances led authorities to the land where Sidney and Beulah resided. A warrant resulted in the finding of scattered bones in the fields behind their home, and the skin of their victims dried and refurbished in their homes as decorations. For their crimes, they were set ablaze in the middle of their field, but not before Sidney and Beulah made a vow to continue to terrify the town for all eternity. Cassandra confronted Abel about this information. She could tell from the look in his eyes that he knew everything already. She found that he'd bought the house because of the low asking price. Stephen's life being sacrificed to save money was too much for Cassandra to handle, and she left Abel, along with most of her possessions in that house. Abel, being wrought with grief and guilt, shot and killed himself. Cassandra was never the same after Stephen disappeared. And Stephen, of course, was never heard from again. The Montgomerys had kept their promise.